What we've done today is we've filmed some film clips using my sons as a way of just showing some ideas about how to encourage young people not only to understand what they should do, but why they should do it. Quite often I refer to this as a funnel, and rather than starting with technical knowledge like, tyre tread is 1.6 millimeters, what we're starting with is understanding the general principles and then working from those general principles to the technical knowledge. We've deliberately kept the clips very short, and we've only covered the areas with regards to that first bit, the general principles, because driving instructors know about the technical knowledge. So I hope you find these clips useful. They're only ideas. I'm sure you can come up with better ones or other ideas about how to do it. But I'd also like you to note Ashley and Patrick's reaction to the questions that I asked. At first they thought the questions were quite easy, but it became very apparent that they didn't really understand the general principles involved in what we were going to ask them to do. They've all been done as single takes, so their responses are completely genuine. And I've also had to think on my feet a little bit just to complete the whole scenario. I'm not teaching either of them to drive, so these are just one-off little things that we've done in a private car park near where we live. I hope you find them useful, and I hope you find them thought-provoking. Thanks ever so much. Alright, Patrick, right, just for the camera, could you just say what experience you've had of driving up to now?
I haven't driven at all.
Right, okay, and how old are you?
17.
You should know that, you're being my son, but there you go. Okay, right, what I'd like to do is just going to introduce you to some basic concepts around the car and some basic ideas, and there's some things that you might also get tested on in your driving test, at some point. But they're also really important for you to know, okay? So we're going to start first with just asking you some fairly daft questions about the tyre review. Alright, so the first question I'd like to ask is, what's a tyre for?
Protecting the wheel.
Protects the wheel? Yeah, that's partly. Anything else?
Grip.
Grip, right, brilliant, okay. So a tyre is really about the grip. It's the only thing that actually touches the road from the car. Okay. So what sort of things do you think, if the tyre's about grip mainly, what sort of things do you think you need to be thinking about when you're maintaining or looking after your tyre? Or what should you check on a tyre?
Certainly how much grip they've got.
How much grip they've got? Yeah, okay. Right. Do you know how much grip they should have?
No.
Okay, right. Come back to a grip in a moment then. Okay, but obviously that's really important. Anything else you perhaps want to check about the tyre that might affect its grip?
Sort of air pressure.
Yeah, why do you think that might affect its grip?
Low air pressure will really reduce grip.
Yeah, too little, and actually only the sides of the tyres touch. Alright, too much and only the middle part of the tyre, so you've got to make sure you've got the right amount of air in the tyre. Yeah, okay. Brilliant. I'm now going to just explain to you a little bit about the tyre tread and how you can easily check it. Alright, Patrick, what we're going to move on to now is a little bit more about what happens underneath the engine a little bit, or what happens underneath the bonnet. And we're particularly going to look at two of the checks that you need to make on a car, which is around oil and coolant. Any idea what the oil does in the car?
Not really.
Okay, right, fab. What I'd like you to do is just put your hands together like that, right, and rub really hard, right, and harder, faster, bit of effort, right, push. Okay, what's happening to your hands?
You're warm.
They get warm, right, okay, what causes that warm?
The friction on it.
Friction, right? Well, the engine's got moving parts, right? So, if you put soap on your hands and you rub them like that, what would happen?
They will get warm.
Right. Engine's got moving parts, so if you like the soap in the engine is the oil, right? What it does is it cuts down that friction between the moving parts, right? So that's what the oil does. The oil helps to keep the engine cool by cutting down that friction. And the coolant, even though that it cuts it down, the engine still produces a lot of heat, so the coolant helps to maintain it at the best temperature. Okay, so the coolant helps cool the car down, and the oil helps to sort of reduce the friction. Okay, Do you know how to check the oil in your water? Coolant, sorry. No? Okay. Well, we'll look at that now. Alright then, Ashley. What we're going to talk about now is just the oil and coolant in the car. Okay. So I'm just going to ask you a couple of daft questions about it first. Do you know what the oil does?
It cools.
Okay.
I just think about it.
Alright. What I'd like to do, just put your hands together like that and rub really hard. Alright. Harder. Faster. Okay. Alright. And stop. Okay. What happened to your hands?
It's not heating up.
Right. Why?
The friction between them.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so your engine's got moving parts.
Yeah.
Whenever you've got moving parts, you have friction. Any idea what the
Decreases friction.
yeah, it's a bit like if you put soap between your hands,
Yeah.
you know, except it's oil. Okay, and what it does is it stops those moving parts rubbing together and reduces the heat.
Yeah.
Even with that, you still get loads and loads of heat.
Yeah.
So you have coolant because that helps to keep the engine at its ideal temperature. Okay, not too hot, not too cold. Okay. Do you know how to check your oil and coolant? All right, Ash. So we've discussed the oil. Think about a really cold day. If you had water in the car, what might happen to the water?
I don't really know.
Well, it could freeze, couldn't it? If it was a really cold day, middle of the wind there, it could easily freeze.
Yeah.
When water freezes, what happens to it? Does it stay the same size or?
Does it shrink down?
It actually expands a little bit. Okay, so what could happen? So if you have something expanding in the engine, what do you think that might do to the engine?
Could lead to like ruptures in pipes.
Brilliant. Okay, so what we put into the reason the fluid we put in, it's called coolant, is actually to mix water in something called antifreeze. What do you think the role of antifreeze is?
To stop water from freezing in the car.
Brilliant. Okay. Yeah. Okay, last little bit for today, Ash. Just want you to tell me what you know. Well, what's the tyre for?
Tyres to increase friction between you, the car and the pavement.
Right.
Not pavement, but road.
Road. Okay. So it's another word for friction is grip, basically.
Grip.
Yeah. Okay. So what was I going to say? So what sort of things should you check on a tyre?
You should always check that it's got tread.
Yeah.
Or enough tread to drive. And also just overall wear.
Yeah.
So if any of bits of the tyre look loose or just folly.
Okay, so you should check your tread. You should check the overall look of the tyre for any cuts or bulges or gouges. Okay. Anything else you want to check?
Air pressure.
Air pressure. Why is air pressure important?
If it's too much increased, it'll mean that you're using more fuel to drive, or it could be eventually unsafe to drive on.
Okay. If there's too much air in the tyre, what would happen to the shape of the top of the tyre if it was sort of too much air in it?
It'd start to like peak up.
Yeah, so it
change
will round,
shape.
right? Okay, which means that you're now only driving on the middle of your tyre.
Yeah.
If there's too little air in the tyre,
You drive too much in time.
well, what will happen is the tyre will cave in.
Yeah.
So now you're only driving on the sides of your tyre.
Yeah.
So actually, the amount of grip that your tyre gives you is very dependent on air pressure. So there's a couple of things that we need, well, three things that you would need to check: the overall wear and tear, which you identify brilliantly, your tyre pressures, and also the amount of tread. Do you know how to check those?